The chandeliers of the Grand Seoul Hotel glittered with a brilliance that rivaled the very stars outside. Music floated through the hall, soft classical notes that blended seamlessly with the murmurs of wealthy guests dressed in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. This was no ordinary wedding. It was the union of two of Korea's most powerful families. At the center of it all stood Kim Dan-min, a tall, impeccably dressed CEO whose sharp jawline and piercing dark eyes could make any woman's heart tremble. His expression, however, was unreadable. Beneath the layers of charm and elegance, Dan-min's mind was a battlefield. This marriage was not love. It was duty. The contract between his family and the bride secured vital business support, but it demanded too much: loyalty, silence, and a promise never to question his future father-in-law's authority. Dan-min glanced at his bride, Shin Yerin, a flawlessly beautiful woman in a white gown embroidered with crystals. Her smile was as polished as the diamonds around her neck. To the world, they looked like a perfect couple. But Dan-min knew better. Her eyes didn't shine with affection. They gleamed with ambition. The officiant raised his voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today to witness the union." The hall fell silent, all eyes fixed on the dazzling couple. But then, pop! A giant gift box at the side of the stage burst open with a spray of confetti. Gasps echoed through the hall as three little boys tumbled out, their voices carrying more power than any explosion. "Daddy. Daddy, you can't marry her. Our mom will be jealous." The words ripped through the ceremony like lightning. Dan-min froze. "Daddy?" Everyone turned, stunned into silence. Even Yerin's perfectly rehearsed smile faltered. And there they were, three identical African boys, about 10 years old, each with curly black hair, smooth dark skin, and wide, intelligent eyes that glimmered with mischief and defiance. They stood proudly on the stage as though they owned it. The hall erupted into whispers. Did he already have children? Triplets. Who's their mother? But before anyone could make sense of it, a voice cried out in panic. "Nathan!
Noah!
Neil! Get back here!" The crowd parted as a woman pushed her way through, her heels clicking furiously against the marble floor. She was Vivian. Her long, curly black hair spilled over her shoulders like a waterfall, framing her glowing dark skin. She wore a simple knee-length dress, elegant yet understated, her beauty standing out even in a hall filled with Korea's elite. Her eyes, however, burned with panic and embarrassment as she rushed forward to grab the boys. Vivian grabbed Noah's wrist first, then reached for Nathan, but the third, Neil, darted away and stood directly in front of Dan-min, staring up at him. "Are you really going to marry her, Daddy?" the boy asked with an innocence that cut sharper than any blade. The hall gasped again. Yerin's face darkened, while Dan-min's grandmother, seated proudly in the front row, did the unthinkable. She smiled. A soft, knowing smile. Dan-min's jaw tightened. His entire life had been calculated, arranged, and forced into perfection. But this chaos, this storm, was something he couldn't control. Vivian finally managed to gather her sons, pulling them close. She bowed deeply, her voice trembling. "I am so sorry. They weren't supposed to. This was a mistake. Please forgive us." Yerin stepped forward, her tone sharp. "Mistake? Barging into my wedding with 3 children claiming to be his? This is more than a mistake. It's a scandal." The guests murmured louder. The reporters at the back were already snapping photos, cameras flashing like wild thunder. Dan-min's grandmother rose slowly, her cane tapping against the marble as she approached the stage. Despite her age, her presence was commanding. She stopped before Vivian and the triplets, her eyes soft as she bent slightly to look at the boys. "And what are your names, darlings?" she asked warmly. The boys straightened proudly, speaking in unison. "I'm Nathan. I'm Noah. I'm Neil." Her laughter rang out, full and genuine. "Oh my, clever and charming, just like him when he was a boy." Dan-min's eyes widened. "Grandmother." The old woman turned to Vivian. "And you, my dear? Are you their mother?" Vivian's throat tightened. The stares, the whispers, the weight of judgment. All of it pressed down on her. But something in the grandmother's gaze gave her strength. She lifted her chin.
Yes.
I am. The hall exploded again. Dan Min's heart pounded. He didn't know who this woman was, nor why her children were calling him daddy, but something about the fire in her eyes and the resemblance in the triplets' sharp jawlines made his world tilt. For the first time in years, the CEO who calculated everything had no answers. And as his grandmother smiled at the boys and gently patted their heads, Dan Min realized one thing. This wedding was over. The wedding hall was still in shock. The three African boys clung to their mother as cameras flashed like a thunderstorm. Guests whispered furiously, some scandalized, others secretly entertained. Yirin, the bride, was trembling with rage. Her painted lips twisted into a scowl as she jabbed a finger at Vivian. Who even are you? How dare you ruin my wedding with such nonsense? Vivian bowed repeatedly, trying to pull her sons away. I am so sorry. I didn't mean to, boys, apologize right now. But Nathan, the boldest of the triplets, puffed his chest out.
No.
Daddy should know the truth. You can't marry her. The crowd gasped again, laughter breaking through the tension. Even some of the stern business moguls at the back chuckled under their breaths. Dan Min clenched his fists at his side, his carefully controlled composure slipping. This is a disaster. Every journalist here will run with the headline, CEO's secret children crash wedding. His grandmother, however, was delighted. She leaned on her cane, eyes twinkling as she studied Vivian. Such handsome boys, she murmured, ignoring the chaos. And what a lovely mother. She has dignity even under humiliation. Dan Min shot her a look, silently begging her not to encourage this madness. But she only lifted her chin, daring him to oppose her. Vivian dragged the children toward the exit, her voice low and urgent. Boys, what have you done? That man is not your father. Noah frowned. But Mama, you were looking at his picture on your phone last week. Yes, Neil chimed in innocently. You even smiled at it. You said, he looks so much like. Vivian slapped her hand over his mouth, her cheeks burning red. Enough. That was nothing. He is not your father. Do you understand me? But the damage was already done. Before she could escape, a commanding voice cut through the hall. Stop. Everyone froze. Dan Min had stepped forward, his dark gaze fixed on Vivian and the children. His voice was low but carried across the hall like steel. You. Don't leave yet. Vivian stiffened, her grip tightening on her sons. Slowly, she turned to face him, her heart pounding. He was taller than she had imagined from the articles and photos, his presence overwhelming in person. His sharp eyes seemed to pierce right through her, as though he could unravel every secret she carried. Mr. Kim, please, she said softly, bowing again. I assure you, this is all a misunderstanding. We'll be out of your way immediately. But Nathan tugged free of her hand and marched up to Dan Min, tilting his chin defiantly. If you're not our daddy, then prove it. The entire hall erupted in laughter. Even the reporters couldn't contain themselves. Flashes fired wildly as they captured the bizarre showdown. Dan Min knelt slightly, meeting the boy's eyes. For a moment, he said nothing, only studied the child's features, the sharp cheekbones, the stubborn glint in his eyes. Something about it stirred an old memory he couldn't place. Then he spoke, calm but firm. I am not your father. Nathan blinked. His brothers gasped. You're lying, Neil shouted. Mom said our daddy was tall and strong. Yes, Noah added stubbornly. And smart and handsome. That's you. The crowd burst into laughter again, while Yirin was practically shaking with fury. She grabbed Dan Min's arm. Why are you entertaining them? Throw them out already. But Dan Min didn't move. His gaze shifted to Vivian, who stood frozen, torn between shame and desperation. Something about the way she held her boys so protectively, even while bowing under the weight of so many hostile eyes, made his chest tighten. He straightened, brushing Yirin's hand off his arm. Enough for today, he said coldly to the officiant. The ceremony is over. Gasps filled the hall. Yiren spun to him, pale, with disbelief. What are you saying? You're canceling the wedding because of them? Danmin didn't answer. He walked off the stage, his steps measured, commanding. Bring them, he ordered one of his aides, nodding at Vivian and the boys. I want to speak to them privately. Vivian's heart dropped. She wanted to vanish, to crawl into the earth and never face this humiliation again. But with security already escorting her gently toward a side room, escape was impossible. The door closed with a heavy thud, muffling the chaos outside. Vivian sat stiffly on the edge of a sofa, her triplets huddled close beside her. They looked far too smug for boys who had just ruined a millionaire's wedding. Danmin stood across the room, arms folded, studying them like puzzles he couldn't quite solve. His grandmother had insisted on following as well, now seated comfortably in an armchair, clearly entertained. So, Danmin began, his voice low, explain yourself. Vivian bowed deeply again, her curly hair falling forward. I truly apologize, Mr. Kim. My children acted without my knowledge. They saw your picture online and they mistook me for their father? His eyebrow arched. Yes, she admitted, her cheeks burning. It was a foolish mistake. Please forgive us. We'll leave Korea tomorrow. At that, his grandmother spoke up sharply. Tomorrow? Over one mistake? Don't be ridiculous. Vivian turned to her in shock. But madam. The old woman smiled warmly at the boys. I like them. They're bright and bold, just like our Danmin when he was young. Danmin pinched the bridge of his nose. Grandmother. But she ignored him. She reached for Neil's hand, patting it gently. Tell me, my dear, are you good at your studies? Yes, Grandma. Neil beamed. Vivian's eyes widened. Grandma. The boys were already adopting her. Nathan added proudly. We're the smartest in our school. Mama says we're geniuses. I can see that, the grandmother said approvingly. Danmin cut in, his patience thinning. This is absurd. They are not my children, and this woman is a complete stranger. We have no connection whatsoever. Vivian nodded quickly, desperate to affirm. Exactly. I swear it. We just got carried away. My children were excited. It won't happen again. But when she finally looked up, her gaze met his, and something electric passed between them. For just a second, Danmin's cold mask faltered. He saw the fire in her eyes, the strength in the way she held herself despite her humiliation. She wasn't like the women he usually met in his world of power and money. She wasn't here to use him, impress him, or flatter him. She was just herself, and that unsettled him. Vivian, meanwhile, felt her pulse race. Standing so close to him, she understood why her sons had mistaken him for their father. His presence was magnetic, commanding, dangerous. Her lips parted as though to speak, but she stopped herself, quickly looking away. His grandmother smirked knowingly. Oh, I think this meeting is fate. Fate. Danmin scoffed. Yes, the old woman said firmly. This woman and her children barged into your wedding. Maybe heaven is telling you something, Danmin. Vivian's heart skipped.
What does she mean by that?
Danmin turned away, his voice clipped. Nonsense. I want them gone. But as he said the words, his grandmother's smile only deepened. The triplets were already climbing onto her lap, giggling as though they had known her their whole lives. Vivian buried her face in her hands. This was only the beginning of her nightmare. And for Danmin, the man who thought he controlled everything, something told him his life had just spiraled into the unknown. The rain was falling in fine silver threads outside the Grand Seoul Hotel, streaking down the glass walls like tears. Inside, the aftermath of the ruined wedding was still buzzing through every corridor, staff whispering, reporters circling like sharks, and the Shin family storming in fury. Vivian sat nervously in the private lounge, her 3 boys drowsy but restless on the sofa beside her. She held their hands tightly, as if afraid they might suddenly run off again and cause more damage. Her mind swirled. She had only come to Korea 2 months ago, struggling to find work that would cover both rent and tuition for the boys' school. She never expected this. Never expected her son's wild imaginations to bring her face to face with one of Korea's most powerful men. On his wedding day, no less. She whispered sharply to the boys, "Do you realize what you've done? You embarrassed him. You embarrassed me." "But Mama," Nathan interrupted, yawning, "he really looked like our dad. You said he was." "Enough," she snapped, her voice softer than the sharp edge of her words. "We do not talk about your father." The boys lowered their heads. Silence fell. At that moment, the door opened. Danmin entered, his presence filling the room as though the air itself bent around him. He had changed out of his tuxedo jacket, the crisp white shirt clinging to his broad shoulders, his tie loosened, his dark hair slightly mussed. But his eyes, those sharp, unreadable eyes, remained the same. Vivian shot up, bowing nervously. "Mr. Kim, please, allow me to apologize again. We'll leave immediately. Just don't press charges. My children didn't know what they were doing." Danmin said nothing at first. He walked past her, his gaze sweeping over the triplets, who were staring back at him with wide, unashamed curiosity. Nathan even waved.
"Hi, Daddy."
Vivian nearly fainted. "Nathan," she hissed. But Danmin surprised her. He crouched slightly, leveling his gaze with the boys. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "I am not your father. But I need to know, why did you think I was?" The boys exchanged glances. Finally, Noah spoke, his tone honest and innocent. "Mama was looking at your picture. She smiled and said you looked like someone." Danmin's eyes flickered briefly toward Vivian. "Someone," he repeated. Vivian felt her cheeks heat. "That's enough, boys. Go back to the sofa." But Nathan, stubborn as always, folded his arms. "She never tells us about him. Maybe it was you." The air grew thick with unspoken tension. Danmin studied Vivian, searching her face for answers, but she refused to meet his eyes. Finally, his grandmother's cane tapped against the floor as she entered, escorted by 2 staff members. She looked delighted to see the boys still there. "Good, you're all still here." "Grandmother," Danmin muttered, frustration lining his voice, "this has gone on long enough." She ignored him, addressing Vivian directly. "My dear, where do you live?" Vivian stiffened. I rent a small apartment in Itaewon." "And what do you do?" "I work part-time at a bakery. And clean offices at night," Vivian admitted, her voice low, embarrassed. "It's not much, but it pays for my children's school." The old woman's eyes softened. She glanced back at her grandson. "Do you hear that, Danmin? She works herself to the bone to raise 3 fine boys. And what do? Sit here, frowning, worrying about your public image." "Grandmother." "Don't grandmother me," she cut sharply. "I like this woman. I like her children. You're too cold, Danmin. These children, they bring warmth." Vivian shook her head, panicked. "No, madam, please. You misunderstand. We don't want anything from your family. We'll leave right away." But the grandmother silenced her with a raised hand. "You'll do no such thing. You'll stay in Seoul." In fact, her eyes twinkled mischievously. "I want to see you again." Vivian blinked. "Madam." The grandmother smiled at the boys. "Would you like to visit me, little ones? I live in a very big house with gardens you could play in." "Really?" The triplets shouted in unison, their eyes sparkling. Vivian's heart sank.
"No, no, no, no."
"This is getting out of hand." Danmin's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. "Grandmother, don't meddle. This woman and her children have nothing to do with us. And I don't want the press making up stories that I've fathered them." The grandmother raised a brow. "And yet, the world already thinks so. Perhaps it's better if you didn't fight it." Vivian gasped. "No, madam. Please, I can't." "Enough," Danmin growled, cutting both women off. His eyes fixed on Vivian, sharp as knives.
"You."
"I want to talk. Alone." The grandmother, smirking, gathered the boys and led them out into the hallway with surprising ease, leaving Vivian trapped in the lounge with Danmin. As soon as the door shut, silence pressed down between them. Vivian clasped her hands nervously, refusing to meet his eyes. Danmin finally broke it. Who are you really? I told you. Just a single mother. That's all. Don't lie to me. His voice was low, dangerous. Your children nearly destroyed my life today. They called me Daddy in front of Korea's most powerful families. The media will crucify me by morning. Vivian swallowed hard. I'll fix it. I'll make a statement. No, he stepped closer, his presence suffocating. You'll do nothing. Because any word from you will only make things worse. Her chest tightened. Then what do you want from me? He stared at her, his dark eyes unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, he whispered, I want to know why, when they looked at me, it didn't feel like a lie. Vivian froze, her breath catching. For one brief, dangerous moment, they stood close enough that she could smell his cologne, clean, sharp, intoxicating. Her pulse raced, her lips parting as though to speak, but no words came. Danmin's gaze lingered on her face, on the curve of her lips, before he suddenly pulled back, shaking his head. Forget it. Leave. Vivian's knees nearly buckled with relief. She bowed quickly, fumbling to the door. But just as she reached it, he spoke again. Wait. She turned slowly, her heart hammering. Danmin's expression was cold once more, but his words were like a spark tossed into dry wood. From now on, you and your children will stay where I can see you. Her eyes widened. What? You heard me, he said firmly. Until this mess dies down, you're under my watch. If the world believes I have a secret family, then so be it. You'll play the part. Vivian's stomach dropped. You can't be serious. But he was. Deadly serious. And as she stared at him in shock, her mind spinning, she realized that her life, and her son's, had just been bound to this cold, mysterious man. Meanwhile, in another wing of the hotel, Yirin paced like a caged animal, her perfect makeup smeared with angry tears. He humiliated me, canceled the wedding, because of that African woman and her brats. Her father, Shin Dong-hwan, a powerful chairman, clenched his jaw. This is unacceptable. No one embarrasses us like this. We'll destroy her. Yirin's lips curled into a cruel smile.
Yes.
If she thinks she can take my place, I'll make her regret ever stepping foot in Korea. The ride to the Kim family mansion was silent, except for the occasional giggles of the triplets as they peered out of the tinted car windows. The limousine's plush leather interior and glowing ceiling lights mesmerized them. Vivian, however, sat stiff, her hands twisted together in her lap, her chest tightening with each passing second. What am I doing here? She had tried to argue. She had tried to beg Danmin to let them go back to their small apartment in Itaewon. But his grandmother had insisted. They'll stay with us tonight. At least until the reporters cool down, the old woman declared, silencing even Danmin with the authority of her tone. And so here they were, her sons, and the most intimidating man she had ever met. Danmin sat across from her, his sharp profile illuminated by the soft glow of the lights. He hadn't said a word since they entered the car. His jaw was tense, his gaze fixed outside the window. Vivian tried to look away, but her eyes kept stealing glances at him. She hated that her heart skipped each time their gazes accidentally met. When the gates opened, the boys gasped in unison. Whoa! It's bigger than our whole school. Do people even live here, Mama? Vivian could only swallow nervously. The Kim mansion looked like something out of a drama set, tall marble columns, sprawling gardens lit by lanterns, fountains spraying crystal water that sparkled under the night sky. The staff lined up at the entrance, bowing deeply as the family car approached. Vivian flushed with embarrassment. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was an intruder in a world that wasn't hers. Danmin's grandmother was waiting at the steps, her cane resting elegantly beside her. She clapped her hands in delight as the boys tumbled out of the car, racing toward the gardens without hesitation.
Ah.
Such energy. They remind me of Danmin when he was their age. Danmin's lips pressed into a thin line. Grandmother, don't romanticize this. They are not. But the old woman had already taken Vivian's hand warmly. My dear, you mustn't be shy. Tonight, you're a guest. You and your boys. Vivian bowed repeatedly, her face burning. Madam, I can't accept this hospitality. We don't belong here. Nonsense. I decide who belongs, the grandmother said firmly. Inside the mansion, the boys ran through the hallways, their laughter echoing against the high ceilings. Staff trailed nervously behind them, trying to keep them from knocking over priceless vases. Vivian followed, mortified, calling after them. Nathan.
Noah.
Neil.
Don't touch that.
Don't run. But they were unstoppable. They darted from one grand room to another, their eyes wide with wonder. Nathan climbed onto a velvet sofa and spread his arms like a king. Mama, can we live here forever? Vivian's heart nearly stopped.
No.
We're leaving tomorrow. This is not our home. From the corner, Danmin leaned against the wall, watching the scene unfold. His expression was cold, but there was a flicker in his eyes as he saw the triplets sprawled out on the sofa, their laughter so carefree, so alive. He hadn't heard laughter like that in this house for years. The grandmother chuckled. Perhaps they should stay forever. Danmin's jaw tightened. Grandmother. Hush, she said, raising her cane. Let me enjoy this. Later that evening, Vivian was shown to a guest suite large enough to fit her entire Itaewon apartment twice over. She stood awkwardly in the center, still clutching her handbag, while her sons bounced excitedly on the king-sized bed. No homework, no curfew, and a huge bed. Noah shouted, "This is paradise." Neil added. Vivian sighed, sitting at the edge of the bed, rubbing her forehead. She had to remind herself, this wasn't permanent. They didn't belong here. Tomorrow, she'd take her children back to their modest life. A knock came at the door. Before she could answer, it opened. Danmin stepped inside. Her heart lurched. He looked different without the stiffness of the tuxedo, his white shirt sleeves rolled up, his tie gone, revealing a relaxed but dangerous kind of masculinity. The boys immediately shouted, "Daddy!" Vivian groaned, "Boys!" But Danmin ignored the title. He crossed the room slowly, his gaze fixed on her. She could feel her pulse quicken with each step he took. When he stopped a few feet away, his voice was low, steady. "This is temporary. Do you understand? Don't let my grandmother's games give you ideas." Vivian swallowed, nodding quickly. "Of course. I don't want to be here any more than you want me here." Something flickered in his eyes, annoyance, or maybe curiosity. He took another step closer, so close she could feel the warmth radiating off him. "Then why," he murmured, his gaze locking on hers, "do your children look at me like I'm their father?" Vivian's breath caught. She could smell his cologne, clean, sharp, intoxicating. Her lips parted, but she couldn't form words. The silence stretched, electric. His eyes dropped briefly to her lips before he abruptly pulled back, as if burning himself. He turned away sharply, his voice clipped. "Keep them in line. Don't embarrass me again." And with that, he left, slamming the door behind him. Vivian collapsed onto the bed, her heart pounding. Meanwhile, in the Shin family mansion, Yirin sat in her dressing room, tearing off her diamond earrings and tossing them across the floor. Her father entered, his expression dark. The reporters are already circulating headlines. CEO Kim Danmin's secret family revealed at wedding. Yirin's fists clenched. Because of her. That woman. That foreigner with her brats. Her father's eyes hardened. Find out who she is. Every detail. If she thinks she can take the place that was meant for you, we'll crush her. Yirin smiled coldly at her reflection in the mirror, her painted lips twisting into a cruel curve. "Yes, father. I'll make sure she regrets ever setting foot in Korea." Back in the mansion, by midnight, the house was silent. Vivian slipped out of bed, careful not to wake the boys, and stepped into the balcony. The night air was cool, brushing against her face as she looked up at the stars. Her thoughts were heavy. What am I doing here? How did my life get this complicated? She didn't hear the footsteps until a deep voice startled her. "Can't sleep?"
She spun.
Danmin stood in the shadows, one hand in his pocket, his expression unreadable. "I know," she admitted softly. It's too strange. I don't belong here. He stepped closer, the moonlight painting his sharp features. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The world seemed to shrink, leaving only the two of them on that balcony. Vivian whispered, almost against her will, "Why do you look at me like that?" His gaze deepened, his jaw tightening. Then, unexpectedly, he leaned in slightly, his voice low, husky. "Maybe because I can't figure you out." Her breath hitched. Their faces were inches apart now, the tension thick, undeniable. She felt her pulse hammer in her throat, her lips tingling with the dangerous possibility of what might happen next. But then, "Mama, I had a bad dream." The moment shattered. Noah burst onto the balcony, clutching his blanket. Vivian quickly scooped him up, her cheeks flushed. Danman stepped back, his mask snapping back into place. "Put them to bed," he muttered, turning away. But as he left, his heart was racing just as fast as hers. The night air over Seoul was thick with spring warmth, carrying the scent of cherry blossoms and rain. The city lights shimmered like restless stars, but for Danman, the world felt strangely quiet. He had spent the last week haunted by the little African boys with wide brown eyes who called him daddy, haunted by their mother who carried herself with fire, grace, and stubborn pride.
Vivian.
Her name tasted strange on his lips when he murmured it alone, like something forbidden yet destined. But this evening, everything was about to change. Danman sat in his private office, glass walls framing the endless Seoul skyline. Papers scattered on his desk, the annulment agreement from his failed arranged marriage, contracts his board wanted him to sign, letters from his grandmother pressing him to stop playing with fate and choose happiness. And then his phone buzzed. It was Vivian. CEO Kong. Her voice was calm, but her accent carried weight, like she had rehearsed before calling. "We need to talk.
Tonight.
Please." He almost laughed bitterly. "Finally. You've been dodging me since the wedding fiasco. Do you know how much trouble you caused me?" There was silence on the other end. Then a soft sigh. "Do you know how much trouble your face caused me, Mr. Kong? I didn't send my children to ruin your life. They mistook you for someone you're not." Danman leaned back in his chair, his chest tightening. "Then who am I to them, Vivian?" There was a pause. "A dream. Maybe a lie. Maybe the hope of a father they never knew." His jaw clenched. "And you? Who am I to you?" The silence stretched until her voice finally dropped, low, trembling.
"Come.
See for yourself. Come meet us properly." Vivian's apartment was small compared to the grand penthouses Danman was used to, but it was warm. The walls held children's drawings, the smell of food lingered in the air, and laughter spilled from the living room. When Danman entered, 3 identical boys scrambled to their feet. "Daddy," they chorused, running toward him. His chest ached. He had no connection to them, but seeing their bright smiles made him feel something raw, something dangerous, something he couldn't explain. Vivian appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her long curly hair cascaded down her shoulders, her eyes narrowed with a mix of irritation and something softer. "Don't encourage them," she said flatly. "They'll only get hurt when they realize the truth." Danman crouched down, looking at the boys. "What truth?" he asked gently. "That you're not their father," Vivian whispered. The boys looked between them, confusion written on their faces. One of them, the boldest, crossed his arms. "But he looks like our daddy. And Mama smiles different when he's here." Vivian's face flushed crimson.
Out.
"All of you.
Bedroom. Now."
The boys groaned but obeyed, shuffling away, their whispers trailing down the hallway. Left alone with Danman, Vivian folded her arms. "You can leave too. They'll forget you if you stay away." Danman rose to his full height, his voice firm. "And if I don't want to?" Her lips parted, then closed again. She looked away, pretending to adjust a vase on the table. "You don't know me.
You don't know what I've survived."
Men walk in and out of lives like mine, Mr. Kong. Rich men, powerful men. They come, they play, and they leave. I'm not playing that game." Danman stepped closer. "Do I look like I'm playing?" Vivian turned sharply, fire in her eyes.
"Yes."
Because you don't understand what it means to raise 3 children alone. To hold your head high while people whisper that you're nothing but a scandal. You don't understand. Before she could finish, he caught her wrist, pulling her closer. His voice was low, dangerous. Then let me understand. Let me in, Vivian. Her breath hitched. Their faces were inches apart, the heat between them undeniable. Dan, she whispered, torn. And then his lips crashed against hers. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, hungry, filled with weeks of tension snapping at once. She pushed at his chest for a second, but then melted against him, her hands tangling in his hair. The kiss deepened, their bodies pressed together, hearts racing. For a moment, the world ceased to exist. No boardrooms, no children, no past mistakes. Just 2 souls colliding in dangerous need. When they finally broke apart, gasping, Vivian's eyes were glassy. This is wrong, she whispered. Danmin cupped her face.
No.
This is the only thing that's right. But happiness was never simple. The next day, tabloids exploded with headlines. CEO Kang's mystery woman revealed. Who is the African single mother with triplets? Corporate chaos as Kong Air spotted with unapproved lover. Vivian's phone rang nonstop. Her neighbors whispered. Her boys came home from school upset after classmates mocked them. Vivian stormed into Danmin's office, slamming her phone on his desk. This is exactly why I didn't want this, she snapped. Your world is not mine, Danmin. My children can't live in your chaos. Danmin stood, anger flashing in his eyes. So, your solution is to push me away? To pretend this isn't real? It isn't real, she screamed, tears spilling now. You're not their father. You don't belong here, and if I let myself fall for you, I'll lose everything I've built for them. Danmin's voice softened, breaking. What if I told you you wouldn't lose anything? What if I told you that you and those boys are everything I've been searching for? Vivian froze. Her lips trembled. Dan. But before she could speak again, his grandmother walked in. Grandmother Kong, elegant and sharp-eyed, leaned on her cane. She looked at Vivian, then at Danmin. I've seen enough, she said. Vivian, is it? Vivian bowed awkwardly, her cheeks flushed. Why, yes, ma'am. The old woman smiled. The day those boys appeared, I thought fate was playing a cruel trick. But now I see it was a gift. Danmin has spent his whole life chained to duty. You and your children broke those chains. Vivian blinked, stunned. You approve? Grandmother Kong nodded slowly. As long as you love him, and as long as he proves he's worthy of you. Danmin looked at his grandmother, his throat tight. Hermione, the old woman smirked.
Don't thank me yet.
Love is easy.
Responsibility is not.
Show her you can be a father, not just a lover. Weeks later, Vivian and the boys stood in the garden of the Kong estate. Cherry blossoms rained down like confetti. Danmin approached, dressed in a simple white suit, holding a velvet box. The triplets gasped, eyes wide. Is that a toy? Danmin knelt before them, opening the box to reveal 3 silver bands. These aren't toys, he said softly. They're promises. One for each of you, that I'll protect you, guide you, and never walk away. The boys grinned, slipping the rings on proudly. Then Danmin turned to Vivian, pulling out another ring, this one gold and sparkling. Her eyes filled with tears. Dan, he took her hand. This isn't an arranged marriage, Vivian. This isn't about contracts or families or appearances. This is me choosing you. Choosing them. Choosing us. The boys bounced excitedly. Say yes, Mama. Say yes. Vivian laughed through her tears. You 3 planned this, didn't you? Danmin smirked. Actually, they did. They asked me to marry you first. Vivian covered her mouth, overwhelmed. Then she nodded. Yes. 1,000 times yes. The boys cheered, cherry blossoms swirled in the air, and Danmin pulled Vivian into a kiss, soft, tender, eternal. This time, it wasn't desperate or forbidden. It was a beginning. Months later, the headlines had changed. CEO Kong marries African beauty in blossoming love story. Business meets heart, a modern fairy tale. In the calm household, chaos reigned, the triplets running through halls, Vivian's laughter echoing, Danmin's voice calling after them. And every night, when the world was quiet, Danmin would hold Vivian close, whispering against her hair. "You were never a mistake. You were the surprise I didn't know I needed." Vivian would smile, kiss him softly, and answer, "And you are the father my children chose." And together, they built not just a family, but a future born of chaos, love, and fate's strangest surprise.